How many of you have used ChatGPT in the last like couple of months? Oh, everybody. Wow, amazing. So how many of you have used it to generate UI code? Oh, okay, quite a few of you. Then you should be taking this session, not me. Then, okay. I'll try to cover something else other than ChatGPT. Then we'll go off the road and we'll see what other tools are available, right? I'm Shashanka N. Brief intro about myself. I'm Shashanka N. I'm from Bangalore. I work as senior staff engineer at Code and Theory. So we'll start off. This was what I did for this presentation, by the way. I asked Gemini to generate a script for me to talk during this presentation. And yeah, it came up with the proper script. I made some changes. That's why I'm talking here. So this is the first statement that I wanted to make. You will not be replaced by AI, by the way. Each one of you will still have a role to play in the market that's going to come later on. I know there's a lot of apprehension going on in the market about what will go on when AI becomes more mature. We'll see. I may be proven wrong, but I would like to be proven right. Right. We'll start off with the session itself. If I show you the setup that I have running locally, right, I'll start off with a very small website called v0.dev. Have any of you heard about this? One hand. Okay, good topic for me to cover then. We'll start off. This is a very small website by a company called Vercel. It does hosting of your static websites, and your Next.js code is actually written by them. Next.js framework is actually maintained by the company called Vercel, right? So v0.dev is their product. It's still in beta, right? What you can do here is you can give it a prompt. It will generate UI code for you, right? Get ready to be scared, right? I just clicked on contact form. There's the prompt that it has given me by default. It says a contact form with first name, last name, email, and message fields. Put the form in a card with a submit button. Yeah, we'll click on submit. We'll give it some time. And it's going to start generating stuff for us. I'm just seeing your faces so that I know who's scared and who's not. Okay. I was scared when I saw this first, right? Reason being that this is what each one of us do at our jobs, right? We take requirements, we translate them into code, right? So the first thing that I observe is that the card is maybe having the wrong color scheme, right? I'll just say make the submit button blue. We'll hit enter. We'll see what it does. So we'll generate the contact form again. Yeah, now you have a blue colored submit button, right? You can stretch this, by the way. You can say, I want first name and last name in different lines, right? I don't want them in the same row. Make the first name field full width.
Is it generating the complete code again for every small change?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I'll show you the code in just a bit. We'll see the differences between the various versions that we have generated. So I think it failed at doing the full width thing. I need to kind of prompt engineer it better, maybe, right? But if I look at the changes that we have done, there is a V0, there is a V1, and there's a V2 on your screen. If I look at the code for V1, for example, if I click on the code tab here, I'll see React code written down for it, right? So if I copy paste this code into my Next.js project, which would run right off the bat, right? But do not copy paste code into your React app just yet. What you need to do is there are some dependencies for this, right? This is the command that you use. There's a command line tool called V0 that you basically invoke with this particular command. So npx v0 add rq5 whatever blah blah blah, the identifier that's given there, right? What this will do is this will pull in all the dependencies. Now v0.dev is dependent on two libraries, right? One is called shadcn/ui. People who are watching influencers like Theo or other people on YouTube, you should know what that is. There's another one called radix. Both of these combined is what is forming the base of your v0.dev output. So this command basically pulls in both of those dependencies and gives you a UI to start with. However, you will quickly hit a wall with this, right? This is good for a product owner or somebody who, or yourself, if you want to make some quick changes and show it to somebody. right? That works. But the reason why it would fail is it cannot do any charting of its own. It cannot generate charts. It cannot include scripts on its own, or whatever it is. Whatever base components are available, this would work based off of that, right? That's how this is designed. And chatcn/UI, and let me just open Radix. You'll see they have a very good website. Yeah, this provides a bunch of themes, primitives, icons, your entire design system, and v0.dev is actually built based off of that, right? So you already have a very good base of components, right? Which also brings in another question. If you are able to define your base components, can generative UI generate a UI for each person coming into your website on the fly? And if there is caching enabled, can it cache for hundreds of users and profile them in one pillar and then serve the same website to them versus 200 other people from the US versus 300 other people from Germany? Can it do that? Something to be explored, right? So this is one tool that I wanted to demonstrate, which is v0.dev. Let's move on to the next one. There's another uh, tool called Olama. Is there anybody who has explored this? Oh, the same hand. Cool. Good to know. So there's another tool called Olama, which is by a very small company called Facebook. Right? We'll open that website. This is the website. There's nothing on this website which is having ads or it's not funky or anything. It's just an open source tool at this point. What this thing can do is it can run your own local LLMs. ChatGPT falls into the domain of being an LLM, right? Large language learning models, right? So you have various models here which you can use in order to generate code and prompt engineer your way through software engineering, right? I'll just do a small example of what that looks like on the command line, right? Okay, I'm just going to use Llama 2. So these are various models that you have. Okay. Okay. Let me increase the font size a little bit. Okay, I see a prompt in front of me right now, right? What I'll do is I'll ask it to generate an HTML5 scaffold for a generic homepage. You'll start seeing stuff already. This is running on my local machine, by the way. This is not using ChatGPT API or whatever. This is free for all of you to use. You can run this on your local systems for free, right? No need of asking your companies to give you ChatGPT Pro keys. Okay. So that's one thing. You'll see generates headers, footers, everything, and then it starts explaining as well. Explaining is the point where I'll stop it because I know what HTML structure looks like, right? If I look at the code, it's pretty believable that somebody junior might have written this code, or somebody mid to junior level might have written it, right? I can also ask. So there's a context window. There's a concept called a context window where the responses that have been generated already will feed into the responses that is generated next. For example, if I talk to somebody amongst you and he or she says, my name is XYZ, right? Then I ask that person where they stay. The context window is two right now, which is I ask them their name, then I ask them where they stay. So the context is two, which means I've asked them two questions so far, right? The context window size is very important in generative AI because that's what tells you how many number of your questions are carried over to the next question, the context of which is getting carried over, right? And that is very important in generative AI, especially with respect to code, because if I ask this tool to make some changes right now, it should not be that it generates new code every time. It's not useful to you. Often your code is written once and then you start iterating on it. That's when it's useful to you, right? So this is one thing that you can use on your command line. This has a very good support for context window. By the way, Gemini beats ChatGPT in terms of context windows because of this thing. They say they have a 7 billion parameter or some absurd number like that, right? You can keep asking it questions. It will still keep generating code for you based on your previous answers. So that's how it works. So this is something on the command line. I'm going to pause this here because it's not much use to you if you see things on the command line, right? You want to translate this into code inside your IDEs and stuff like that, right? Let's go into your IDE right now. Yeah, I'll just open my VS Code. I'll delete the two files that I have here already, which I was using to just generate things. Yeah, I'll create a new file. I'll call this index.html. There is a plugin called Continue in VS Code, right? I'll just open the plugin so you guys know which tool I'm talking about. So this is the Continue Code Llama tool. You can use this to hook your IDE up with multiple generative AI models, including Gemini, ChatGPT, Code Llama. If you have it running locally, right, this can work with all of them. Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll just go back. I'll just open a new session here. Command Shift L to bring up this window. Then I'll say generate something that I did on the command line, right? Generate an HTML5 scaffold to mimic, or let me put it more simply, generate an HTML5 scaffold. That's it. It'll take some time. It's running on my local system.
But where is the large language model in this case?
Oh yeah, I forgot to cover that. Thank you. Good question. The large language model is running on my local system right now. It's on a tool called Olama by Facebook. It's running on my status bar right there, right? That's what I just used to prompt this thing as well. So let me just open a new tab. This is how I ran it. Olama is a command line tool which kind of uses the LLM to get its answers for me. I can either run it on the command line or I can use a Visual Studio Code plugin. Both are running on my local machine.
The model itself is saved on the local.
Correct. Correct. Around 4 gigs right now. 4 GB.
So it's
Correct. Correct. Since it was already, I had already downloaded this earlier, it did not prompt me to download again, but it automatically pulls it when you run the command. Yeah, it does. I wish I could have shown you that step as well, but I did not know if the bandwidth would permit me. So I just ran it earlier. But you should just be able to get it running with this, and you can just download the tool from here. This should give you the command line tool. Either you're on Mac OS, Linux, or Windows, it doesn't matter. And then the tool should be able to. So the way that I kind of run it is, this is my go-to command basically. Olama2:7b. That means it is the version number of the model that we want to use, right? There are a bunch of these models that are listed out here. So this says there is 70 billion parameters that it supports. So this is my go-to model that I'm using for this. Yeah. If you run it from your command line, it will automatically download it. Then it will create the prompt for you. Any other questions before I move on? On the web page or the VS Code? Oh, okay. Okay. Cool. Will do. No questions before I move on? Okay. Okay. Let's move on then. So in VS Code, I just typed in my prompt. I got a bunch of things from it. You'll see that it's actually colored green right now, like a git diffs, right? This is something that the LLM prompted for you. You just got it in your IDE. I can either accept or reject this suggestion right now, right? So Command Shift Enter to accept, Command Shift Backspace to reject, right? I accepted it because this is what I want it to look like. There is another functionality of this plugin called context sensitivity. So the methodology that I just showed you with Command Shift L, this kind of generates the whole file, right? I don't want to keep generating from start to end. I want the context window thing to be there, right? So what I'll do is I'll just select this part of my code. I'll hit Command Shift M to send it to the left. This is the context window for the LLM that I'm prompting, right? This is the context with which I'm going to ask it more questions, right? So my question for this would be, I'm a junior developer right now. I don't know what a meta tag is, right? I just came across this code in the code base. What do I do? So I'll ask it, Please describe what this does. You'll see it once again starting to run, and it'll start describing each line of the code to you, right? You can ask it further questions, keep iterating on the same thing, right? Or you can switch over to a different context, right? There are things like files that you can contextualize. You don't want it to answer the entire, you don't want it to generate an explanation for the entire project for you, right? You want it to be file specific, for example, right? You can just do this at index.html, then give your prompt, right? Explain the basic structure of this file. It tells me what index.html is. If I am a junior developer who doesn't know what this is, say you're exploring code in Rust or Python or something like that, you're a front-end dev, right? You can use this to basically understand what the file structure is, how to execute it on the command prompt, all of those things. This is a very useful tool according to me, right? This is one. You can also switch between ChatGPT, ChatGPT 4 Vision, Gemini, or CodeLama. I'm using CodeLama right now, so I'm not going to touch this option, right? But you'll get different varying options based on what you have selected here, right? For example, I'll just switch over to ChatGPT 4 for a minute, right? I'll ask it the same question. Explain what this file does. Yeah. So you will see the first paragraph itself was different. The format that it's giving you answers in, all of these are different because it's using a different LLM. If I show you what it generated with Olama, the index.html file is the main entry point of a web application and it typically has the following basic structure. That's the first paragraph. Whereas here it said is the default or main web page that a server comes up when a client requests the root of a web server's directory and so on and so forth. So you will see the difference in the two LLMs, how they're generating responses for you. And to me, this sort of a choice is very much required when it comes to manipulating these generative AI tools to get your work done. You should not be depending on one generative AI tool like ChatGPT, for example, right? What if tomorrow they increase their price? It's Microsoft after all. They're going to increase their price tomorrow, right? So open source tooling like this is very much required, and this integrates very well with your IDEs also, and it can do things for you in a context sensitive way, right? Just to create more fear, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a JSX file now, right? I'll call it index.jsx. So I'll say generate some code for a not some code. I'll say generate code for a dashboard app. I'll say generate React code. Or let me say generate code right now. Let it understand that it's a React app by itself. Yeah. It started doing something. We call this hallucinations in AI, right? In AI terms. Sometimes AI goes out of its way to generate an answer for you. That's when it looks like this, right? This is what I wanted to demonstrate. Don't depend on AI 100% to do your job. It can probably get you like 40% of the way, whereas 60% is your thing to do. That's where your expertise comes in. That's why we need devs, right? So I'll accept all of these answers, but you will see that there's a syntax error here because there is an explanation attached to it as well. I'll go delete this. There is some code that's commented here. I'm going to remove this. Then you will see that this looks like a feasible, React component. I'm not going to start running this right now, but just to prove the point that it can generate files of different nature for you with various different programming languages, right? So this should get us all closer to being full stack, right? Where we were front end specialists before. It's okay to have passion in one area, but we can also become, full stack developers right now. Even somebody like me who has never worked on the backend, right? So even I can confidently say, give me a file, give me a project, I'll understand, I'll figure out how to do things. Yeah. So this was the tooling part of it. Let's go back to my presentation. Now we'll talk about some quotes, right? This is my famous quote in my friend circle, by the way. I'm not famous or anything, right? You will not get replaced by AI is the quote that I keep saying every now and then. Reason being that I still don't see AI at a point where, it can replace not the best of the breed, not the best developers out here, but me, I'm a average dev at in all ways and forms, right? It still cannot replace what I do, because being a dev is not just writing code and throwing it out there on the production server. It's also about maintaining it. It's also about debugging it, talking to stakeholders, figuring out what needs to be done, participating in scrums, which Gen AI can't do today. Yeah. We'll go to the next slide, which is problems with Gen AI, right? This is the most interesting part to me, because if anybody asks me, why do you think Gen AI can't replace you? This is why, right? Data quantity and data accuracy is a huge problem today in the generative AI world. The reason being, each company has its own silo of data, right? Facebook has its own silo of data. So same with Google, same with Microsoft. All of our companies have our own silos of data, right? And that quantity of data is not enough to generate the sort of accuracy that you're looking for with generative AI, right? So that's the reason why I think that is a huge problem. That coupled with the next two problems make it cripplingly, difficult to use Gen AI for production use cases today. It may be the case that there is some breakthrough 5 years later and I'm proven wrong, but I'd still stick to my statement in that case, right? Traceability is a huge problem, because if I ask ChatGPT to come up with a solution to a simple problem, right? If I save 5,000 every month, at the end of 20 years, how much do I have after compounding interest? ChatGPT fails at this, by the way, right? It hallucinates some answer that it thinks it's right, right? And then when you ask it, based on what did you come up with this thing, it will give you the correct formula for computing compound interest, but it would not have followed these steps while arriving at that answer, right? So debugging and traceability is a huge problem, because when you get a response from generative AI, you do not know why it came up with that answer, right? That's one. There is limited reasoning that's also tied up with it. You cannot poke and prod a generative AI model like you do with your code. You can't put a debug point and figure out what were the values that came up until then, right? That's a huge limiting factor in my view, right? That's my talk. Thank you.